That's why the press is supposed to self-regulate. They're supposed to regulate each other through those forms of competition. So I thought that was kind of a good thing to point out, that sort of is a lost art. Now it comes to like who can have the more partisan narrative in a lot of cases versus like competing for the story. I've been talking about the big like outlets, but I kind of missed that competition over stories. I thought that was sort of
I
cool.
do too. When I was a beat reporter, and this was in San Antonio, and there were 2 newspapers, 4 television stations, 6 radio stations, all competing in San Antonio to get the news out. I was a crime beat reporter, and there a guy that worked at the San Antonio Express News. His nickname was Kid Death. Um, and then there was the San Antonio Light, and Gary Martin, a good friend of mine, was a crime beat and general assignment reported there, and later went on to cover the White House. Very good friend of mine, but we competed, and my thought was, you may beat me on my beat on Monday, but you better cover your ass on Tuesday, because that story that you beat me on, I'm going to develop it further. I'm going to beat your ass on Tuesday. And that to me was one of the purest forms of journalism, one of the most enjoyable parts of journalism, the competition, which is why, dear children, I am an intrepid capitalist. The competition that capitalism brings about is wonderful. We were competing for readers, we were competing for viewers, and it was may the best man win on any given day. And you start over from ground zero every day. I love that, and I wish there were more of it. But in today, to your point, Nolan, in today's journalism world, there's fewer reporters owned by the same companies, and competition is not a part of the. And people say, well, that's the end state of capitalism, and that's why we need communism. And I'm going, no, that's why you need regulated capitalism. Bust up the media monopolies, create that competition, and that's the most sincerest form of journalism, is competing for a story and getting it before and getting it vetted factually. Man, there's not a greater feeling on the planet as a reporter when you get to walk in and go, ha ha ha, I beat your ass.
Well, speaking of that, because we brought up Bin Laden a second ago, like that was left out of the documentary, but it was like Cy Hirsch directly contradicting a lot of like the legacy media coverage regarding the capture of Bin Laden. For folks who don't know, he his reporting concluded that Pakistan was involved in handing Bin Laden over to the U.S. That the U.S.
Yes.
did not surprise Pakistan, and that I think he claimed that Pakistan had Bin Laden in captivity since 2006, so it wasn't really like a SEAL team capture. He was handed over from a prison, and like they left that whole thing out of the story. But if you wanted controversy and you wanted like the real Cy Hirsch versus legacy media, to me that was more of the story than like the Nord Stream pipeline, which they focused on that. But to me, that was he said, I have one source who said this. I reported what the source said. Like it wasn't a controversial take in my opinion, but the Bin Laden one, I thought that was a lot more meat on the bone for the documentarian to work with, but for some reason they avoided it.
Well, and what you bring up, one source stories, where I come from, you don't publish a one source story, unless you're the source and you saw it firsthand. So when I say I was at January 6th and I watched a guy fall off a wall, that's what I saw. I don't need to verify that source. I saw it. I reported it. That's the way it happened. I was there. Here it is on tape. Here's the picture. Blah blah blah. And I liked how he said, "How would you have the where was it, the prison stuff when Abu Ghraib when he said, where would you have been without the pictures? We wouldn't have published, because it was he said, she said." Very important for reporters to understand the verification, again, the collaborative process of journalism. And I like how it forced 60 Minutes hand, and you've got Dan Rather going, they're making us do this, folks. Complete opposite of what you would have out of 60 Minutes today. They would suppress it.